Today's exam was actually not bad. Uceed was one of my favorite exams because I was not really good at logical reasoning. But this time's paper was a lot different compared to all of the past papers that we have done. There was no GK questions at all, and then the maths part also was pretty easy. We just had to think a little bit. The answer is already in the question, and most of the questions were animation related and surface counting or tracing the path tracing, or they give you paper folding and then find out what comes next. All the questions that you usually practice for UC, that was basic questions. Some of the questions were confusing and was time consuming, but once you get a hang of it, it was okay. So overall, the paper was fine.
The exam was really good. I felt it was comparatively easier than last year's paper pattern because I think they have made quite a changes in the kind of topics they're asking as well. Because when we practice questions in the previous year papers and all, there was more of like historical statements or small paragraphs that we had to study and answer the questions and all. Related to there were more of statements and conclusions kind of questions, but those were completely not there. It was more of spatial reasoning, rotation type questions. It was more of reasoning basically. There were like animation questions as well. So animated rotations were there, and we had to figure out if those figures had to be flipped vertically, and then how the animation would change and all of that. And then the regular net of cubes questions was there. The opened up pattern of a cube, how it would be and all of that. Pattern completion, figure rotation, and there was also this grid question that we had to find. There was a picture that was divided into 9 small grids. And then we had to find out the correct pieces and all of that. And then we had counting triangles and simple questions like that. So nothing was really hard to understand. It was easy to decode. So I think I managed my time well in that. And even the sketching part went really well. So yeah, I think it was a really nice paper.
The eye level was a bit tricky in that question. Like you are standing on the top of a table. So to construct that question, it was a bit tough, but the rules were pretty easy. Like the things you have to add, it was easy.
Drawing part, the question was to draw a canteen. It was a canteen scene. So one thing what was taught in class was not to add any relevant details. So I kept that in mind because since it was an open air scene, outdoor scene, there was a lot of elements to be added and which could have been added, but just focusing on the question. So since a lot of detailing was required, I don't think I got enough time, but I was able to somehow add in all the elements that was asked in the question. So I think a little more 5 more minutes was required for me to completely be satisfied with the question, but otherwise it was good.
So the sketching question, actually compared to last year, this time we had more details that we had to remember to put inside the picture. So the question was, there's a rat in your school canteen. There is a schoolboy he's really frightened and he's sitting on top of a stool. There's a table and there are 2 school bags and a water bottle on it. There is this brave schoolgirl who goes and sends the rat out of the canteen, and the canteen owner is standing on top of the canteen counter because he's also scared and he's looking at the entire scene. There's a tiffin box that's fallen down and there are a few broken plates, so we had to show all of these. So I just took a minute first to remember all the details because I had given the exam last year as well. And last year, because of the half-an-hour pressure, I did forget to add a few details. So I was very particular about not missing out on the details and all. So I created a scene in a 2-point perspective. I drew a 2-point perspective room and showed the back view of the girl because drawing the face is always it's more time consuming to make it look real and all. And for the guy also, I showed that his face is really frightened and he's very like he's shrunk and he's just sitting in one corner. And the plates, I made it look like the tiffin box is opened and it fell out and some food has fallen here and there to make it look like the rat was eating that food. And that's when she came and she was sending it away. So I showed a trail of the food and all of that. Yeah, so that's pretty much how I did it. So I finished it like 2 to 3 minutes before only, but I think it was a good paper. I mean, I showed what I had to, I believe.
It is a moderate exam. UC paper is when you first start practicing for UC, it's usually a pretty tough exam, especially if you're not really good at logical reasoning. But compared to all of the years and the papers that we did in class and working at home also, I think this time's paper was actually moderate.
It was in between easy and moderate, and because I mean some questions were difficult. The thing is that considering the negative marking, I did leave 6 questions in total in the whole of 68 questions. I left 6 questions. Mainly because for MSQs, I think I attempted more because first of all, there were not like many statement kind of questions. Like I said, we had to like more of animation and figure questions were there. And with the partial marking, I think it was really helpful. So minimum at least one answer had to be right. So I think for one question or two of them, I put only one option because I was sure of that one option. So I wanted to go with it because why would you lose out on that? And for even for the numerical ability, anyway, because even if you don't attempt it, you get a 0, and even if it's wrong, you get a 0. So there's nothing much to lose over there. So I attempted almost all the questions of numerical ability as well. MCQ had to be handled with care. So in MCQ, I left like 3 questions, but I was happy with all the ones I attempted because I was quite sure that I was able to find out that within these 4 options, any one of them is for sure right. So yeah, I think it went really nice.
NAT questions, it was a bit time consuming actually. So, but I like spent like 5 minutes on some questions and cracked it. Some other questions I just marked it as review and came back at the end. And I got like 2 or 3 questions right at the end. And the last 5 minutes of the 2.5 hours, I got it right. So NAT was actually comparatively easy. MSQs were tough. It was like tricky. Options were all kind of similar. MCQs were relatively really easy compared to the previous questions. The answers were direct and stuff.
I think I divided time in each sections. For example, the total time was 180 minutes. So I considered taking first going through all of the questions and seeing which part is more tough and which one I'll take more time in. And I focused on doing that part first. So I spent more than 30 minutes on the first section and then splitting it accordingly and skipping questions in between. If I don't get the answer in the first 10 minutes, I'll just skip it and then I'll go ahead and do all of the other questions. There's an option to mark as review. So you just put that option in and then go forward and do the other questions and come back to it. Because if it's especially if it's MCQ, there will be negative marking, and so just making sure that you don't mark the wrong answer. It's better to just mark it and then come back to it later. So that's how I was able to somehow finish the paper on time. And I got about 10-15 minutes for checking and coming back and completing some questions that I left out. In drawing session, I had written Uceed last year. So I knew that last time I did not get time at all. I was barely able to complete a room. So what I did is while practicing, I tried drawing furniture and tables that usually they are tables or something related to a room or even an outdoor space which has benches or desks. So what I try to do is while practicing, I tried drawing a furniture or a table within 5 minutes and as much as details as possible. So in the exam, first I tried in a small box, I drew how the view should be, how I want it to look like, and then focus on the next 25 minutes on drawing it. So in that time, as much as details as possible, you try including and try not to include any unnecessary details. What is given in the question is the only thing the the invigilator or the person who's correcting it needs to see. They don't need to see any windows or plants. That if it's asked, draw it. But if it's not asked, those details are not relevant. So I think that's one place we all lose marks because we try to make it look very aesthetic, and that's not required. What's required is making whatever you've asked, whatever they have asked, and making that details and those proportions correct. So that's how I feel like time management is important in drawing?
Actually, till before the exam, I was like this much, say I'll give like half an hour for MCQ and see how much I can finish and all of that. I was thinking, but as soon as, but last minute, what I thought was first I'll go through all the 68 questions in under a minute. Just go through all of them just to see what kind of difficulty level is there, just so that you're prepared for the question before. So you're not suddenly looking at a geometry question or suddenly looking at an animation question and wondering, oh, I haven't seen this or something like that. So I quickly glanced through all the questions, and I actually started with the numerical ability only. And then I switched to MCQ. It was actually to and fro only. I didn't like go in any particular order because we could see the timer as well. It was really helpful. So because mostly when we don't have a timer is when we have to really plan our time very well. So because the timer was there, I was pretty much able to manage. So in the last 15 minutes almost, I was reviewing and trying to reduce the number of questions I was leaving. And then, yeah, I finished on time. So that was because there was nothing to lose. Till the last minute, we could take our time. And yeah, I think that's pretty much how much I planned it. Not anything complicated. Drawing, yes. Actually, I first quickly drew silhouettes of everything. So just the outer sketch. I was creating the scene first, just so that I know this is where I want to place the items, and this is how close the close-up view. This is how much I want to show, and all of that. So I planned out in such a way that I was standing, like say, right next to the guy who was extremely scared. So he was almost like this big on the left side of my paper. So pretty much planned the area that way. And then slowly I just built on it. So it pretty much got over. So whatever shadow and detailing I had to show, I was able to show that.
There was this question where what different pulleys were connected by wires, and one of the speed is given, like point P revolves at 100 per minute, something like that, and we have to find the end point, like the revolution of the last pulley. In between, different pulleys are given and the diameters are also given, so we have to find that. So that was pretty difficult for me. Then which question, like some area related questions were there. Only one value is given and we have to find other things, so that kind of other questions were difficult for me.
So one of the questions was an moving animation. The question was, it was a video, it's an animated video, and it keeps moving in almost, I think, 0.5 second frames. And the question was, there is an eye and nose and ears for a face, an irregular face. You have to identify how many different faces are do you see in the video. So the video keeps moving forward, and we have to find out how many different faces we see in the video. So that is more like a situation test question that they usually ask in an idea or visual knowledge, but it was very different to see such a question in Uceed. I've never seen any animated moving figures asked in Uceed. So there was at least there was one or two questions which had moving animation questions. So this one question was very interesting. I have never come across a question like that for Uceed. So yeah, that was a unique question that stood out.
There was one question on geometry. I planned to ask Anand sir about it. I could pretty much remember the question, I think, but because in numerical ability, I tried to figure it out, but then time was running out, so I left it. So just that one question was quite hard because it was a figure question. It's like two circles are, overlapping with each other almost. And then there's a half triangle kind of thing. So they are just given that this diamond kind of figure, all the four sides are equal, and the center line, this long line that connects in the middle, is 21 centimeters. So we had to find it. But I was like wondering how we take the sectors and all of this. Is one question I got stuck up in. So yeah, I actually didn't. I made sure I wasn't stuck up in a question for too long. So I just immediately moved to the ones I was able to solve, so that I don't leave the ones that I know how to solve.
I would say practice the previous years much more seriously. And the drawing part also, like we only get limited questions from UCD in online for practicing. So just try other question papers also, like NAD and NFT. don't get out of touch. If you're like planning to prepare, just stay continuous. Like no matter how less time are you like giving for the preparation, even if it's 1 month or 2 months, just be consistent with it.
I think focus on doing a lot of figure transformations, like cutting and folding, and how if you're unfolding a dice or a six surface any figure, try making something on your own. Try to just do maybe triangles or circles on each side, and then fold it around and see how it will be in every possible way. I think that will help a lot of students or anyone who is going to write the UCET exam in the next coming years. That will help a lot, because focusing on those questions will actually help you think differently in all the different questions. And most importantly, read the question well, because the answer is actually in the question. If you read it twice, you'll understand it's not a big deal. Most of the maths questions, when you see the question, it's a huge paragraph. They will give so many unnecessary details, and there will be a shaded portion, find the area of this, and they'll give us so many different figures. So, but if you look at it carefully, it's just probably the double of the original figure given, or somewhere there will be a clue in the question itself. So, to all the students who are going to write it, I think I would suggest is to read the question well, because it doesn't require a lot of memorizing formulas or putting a lot of effort into by hearting something. It's more of just observing and understanding the question. So that's what I would suggest.
With the change in pattern, I think partial marking is a really good switch. So we should make sure we score in the MSQ part as much as we can. And since we have nothing to lose in the numerical ability section, it's good to attend all of them. But and even for the MCQs, I think they're focusing less on GK now. It's more of animation related question. Like we had moving animations on the screen. Like there was this one animation that went really fast in numerical ability, and we had to find how many types of faces formed in it. Like there was this like bubble animation where one face came and then another, and you know, like 7 faces like that came. So we had to count that. And there were like movement of balls, like, you know, playing around like that, juggling will be there. So those kind of animation questions were there. So now they're focusing more on those kind of questions. It's more of animation, reasoning, and all of mechanical aptitude, pulley kind of questions. So yeah, if we focus on those areas, I think it'll be fine. Actually, this year when I prepared, I actually almost had my entire day, because I mean, even though I joined college, it was in the morning, but I managed all my classes with it as well. So for those kids going to school, definitely they have to give 1 hour a day, because you see it's not a joke that it's the toughest design exam in India. I mean, compared to NID, okay, those are all hard as well, but for UC, there's another level of preparation that has to go in. Especially, I feel for students who haven't taken science, they need to give more importance to mechanical reasoning and more those IIT-based questions. Yeah, I think doing more of mocks, nothing helps more than doing mock papers in previous year papers, and doing seed papers as well, because seed papers, even though UCEed is comparatively harder, I think seed also gives another level of perspective of what kind of questions can be asked. Especially it helps a lot in the numerical ability section, because I feel numerical ability is the toughest section. But yeah, it varies again. So this is pretty much it. So every hour, if they practice their like abstract tests, verbal reasoning, non-verbal reasoning, mechanical reasoning, spatial ability, all these kind of topics, if they practice, I think they're good to go.